Hey everyone, this is Ashley Elenbaas with Skyhouse Herb School and Apothecary. Today I'll be sharing my personal story with Damiana and using it over the full course of a moon cycle. My hope is to share with you my journey around the topic of pleasure and what this plant was able to open up in me, and how each week sort of a new door opened in terms of my ability to understand and experience pleasure. So I hope you'll find this episode to be helpful. If you want to learn more about Damiana, I did a full video for the video of the month of February on Damiana. I'll include a link in the descriptions where you can find more about the history of use, the dosage, facts about the plant itself, and some of the more modern research. And all that will be available to you if you want to watch that either before or after this. Now, this talk will have some topics that are probably for more mature ears. So this might not be the best one to listen to around little ones with little ears. um, so let's dive in. Now, what I did was for this last moon cycle, I drank Damiana as a tea every day. And this is part of a course that my husband and I are teaching called Roots and Spheres, where we look at the transits, the astrological transits of the month. And for a full lunar cycle, we take one herb and just explore how it works in tandem with the lunar and the planetary transits. And I've selected each of these herbs based on the major highlighted points of each moon cycle. And so, each herb there's a very particular reason why it's associated. However, I will say that these plants you can take anytime. And so if you find the story to be helpful, or if you think you want to dive into an exploration of pleasure at any time, this might be a good plant to take into your body and to take it for a full lunar cycle, just to explore how it might also support you. The topic of pleasure is an important one. We think of often as pleasure and pain as being opposites, right? That we usually want to avoid pain so that we can move into pleasure. But what if somehow we have conflated the two? And if maybe in our psyches, maybe because of the way that we grew up and the modeling that was there available to us from our parents or from our society or culture, somehow pleasure and pain were considered to be connected and interchangeable. So an example of that would be, for someone who grows up, let's say in an abusive home, and for them, if they start to get too engaged in a pleasurable activity, let's say they love to draw, or let's say they love to write, once they start to get immersed in that pleasurable activity, they are no longer able to keep their awareness in their external world. And so all of a sudden they are vulnerable. And this could be vulnerable to verbal abuse, mental abuse, all the abuses, physical abuse, sexual abuse, if they're not in hypervigilance mode. So it is actually unsafe for a child in that environment to seek their own unique experience of pleasure, because then they are left in a more vulnerable situation. The other way that this might be conflated, pleasure and pain, in the mind is if, for example, one was raised maybe in a more religious environment where the idea of pleasure was considered to be sinful, that the body is not here to receive pleasure. The body is here as part of our original sin, and that pleasure is associated with sinfulness, with selfishness, with gluttony, right? You can see where all that could come together, which is ultimately painful, especially if that is what the culture or the adult in your life is teaching you about pleasure, is that pleasure is bad and therefore pleasure is painful. And if you do it, you will not receive attention. You will be given scornful looks. And, also what I think can happen in that situation, actually both of these situations, as a child grows older, is that suddenly not only is pleasure unsafe, But pleasure without productivity is seen as selfish and sinful. So sitting around and coloring, if it's not for some good worthy cause, is just considered to be self-indulgent. And I think a lot of people in our worlds really do suffer from that, where it's any activity that's considered to be relaxing and pleasurable for the person as you get older. We're told that that is just, yeah, indulgent. It's indulgent to do something that doesn't give to your family, doesn't give to your community, doesn't, create money. And so suddenly, as we get older, our what we receive pleasure in and what is pleasurable becomes smaller and smaller and smaller until all of a sudden the midlife crisis hits and we're like, I'm not having any fun. What happened? This is where Damiana can be very helpful because what happens when we forget how to have fun and we forget how to experience pleasure is we begin to get tighter and tighter and tighter and more controlling, especially if pleasure and pain and possible uh, um, trauma is associated with pleasure. Then we get tighter, smaller, more constricted, more confined, and it's really hard to experience pleasure when you're in that fight or flight or freeze or faint or FUC dot 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 or throw up. There's a lot of things that we do in that. I think I mentioned that in the last video in the stress response. So when we're in the stress response, it's really hard for us to be present and to experience pleasure. Damiana as a medicine is so deeply healing for all of those patterns that I just explored and discussed, because what the first thing that Damiana does is it relaxes the nervous system. It is a nervous system sedative, very, very gently. So if we're in that state where we're hypervigilant, hyper-focused, very contracted, very stressed, looking around for danger, the very first thing we need to do is to remind the adult body, you're safe. You're okay. There's no fires to put out. You can let go of that hypervigilance and come back into the moment. So what I found in the first week of taking Damiana was that everything in my nervous system began to relax. I started to actually start to land in my body in a way I hadn't been before, almost like the static of hypervigilance got turned down. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, look, I have these hands. Ooh, they like to feel soft things. Oh, this tongue. Oh my goodness, this thing tastes so good. Why did I never notice how good this could taste? Or like, we could say even music. Oh my goodness, listen to the sounds in my environment. How did I not hear these before? So when we get out of that fight or flight state, then suddenly not only can our nervous system start to notice things in the environment more softly, but in a way where they can be enjoyable, where we can start to hear the chimes and not think about, oh, I got to fill the bird feeder and blah, 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 blah. Like, oh, no, those are just chimes. Let me just enjoy those wind chimes because I am allowed to enjoy things. So for me, week one was all about the softening process, softening, relaxing, getting into my physical body, and actually noticing what I was feeling and noticing what my needs were, which sounds so silly. My husband, he's always like, you know, uh, he'll be like, so do you want to do this or this? And I was like, and it takes me a long time to figure out, well, what do I actually want? And then beneath that is, well, what do I actually need? So Damiana helped make that connection happen more quickly of like, oh, I'm actually in my body now. My body needs to rest tonight. My body needs snuggles tonight. My body needs hot cocoa tonight, right? Like so simple. But once I could identify those needs, then in week two, I started noticing that I was able to act on them. I was able to enjoy them more deeply and act upon it. So not only was I able to say, oh, I'm really tired. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Not only could I say, I'm tired, but I could say, I'm going to lay down and nap, which is completely unheard of for me. I'm not a napper. I'm too busy. I have too much to do. I'm too important, right? All the blah, 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 blah. No, actually, you are tired, Ashley, and you can nap. So that was really quite a breakthrough for me. I also started doing more creative projects. I started drawing again, which I'm not an artist, but I like to draw, especially with colored pencils. So I would take a situation I'd been thinking about and I would just draw a picture of it, in symbols and start to kind of feel through the artistic process, what was really going on under the surface. So then I could start to make different choices and take actions in different way. My aesthetic taste, I began becoming clearer. I started being able to look at things and say, no, that's not me. That's not what I like. I actually really like this. That's a bold move. I typically don't wear red. I really like red. I want to wear more red. So Damiana was kind of in the background showing me it is safe and it is okay to feel what you need to feel. And hey, you can act on that. You have the reserves. One of the things about Damiana is it's an adaptogen, so it helps our body better respond to stress. So when you get into that stress response state, you're able to pull back from it and recover from it more quickly. And so when you do that, you are able to take actions that are more aligned with your actual needs. In week 3, I noticed that I was making better choices when it came to boundaries and other people and being able to really speak my truth. And there were quite a few situations that gave me the opportunity to express exactly what my needs were and exactly what my truth was. Because I felt so safe inside of my own skin, I felt so safe in my environment because I trust my senses. I knew my senses are good. They're correct. They're able to notice things correctly and they're enjoyable. I was able to, in situations when confronted with untruths and injustices, from a very calm place, say, that is not true. And I disagree. And I don't think I was in a place before that where I could have spoken with such clarity exactly what I was feeling and knowing to be true. I also found that my enjoyment of pleasure came to kind of went to the next level. And I was out at a coffee shop and I asked the waitress, this really cute young girl who works at this coffee shop I like to go to. I was like, what's your favorite treat that you guys have? And she was talking about this in-house made coffee cake. And I was like, oh, can I try that? She's like, of course, it's so good. And I typically don't order desserty foods. I try to eat healthy, right? But as Damiana's working inside of me, it's showing me that I my body wanted something pleasurable. I acted on it and I ordered it. And then I ate it. And then I trusted myself to say, I am not going to eat this every day, right? I think for some of us with pleasure, we can get into this feedback loop of if I start to go down the road of pleasure, I might go too far and never come back. And with my personal experience with eating disorders and drug use, that was a thing where it'd be a slippery slope, I'd start, but now because I'm older, I have more life experience, a lot of years of sobriety and working sobriety programs. What Damiana did for me was it allowed me to really be able to see you can have this cake and it's just cake. You're relaxed, you're safe, your senses are trustworthy, you are trustworthy. You can eat this piece of coffee cake and it doesn't have to mean anything or do anything other than just be a piece of coffee cake in a cute cafe, writing in your journal. And then tomorrow will be a new day with new decisions. But because I made this decision, I'm not going to fall down into a black hole. It was like, wow, amazing. It was almost like Damiana was holding my hand, leading me into pleasure, showing me pleasure is safe, pleasure is good, and that pleasure has limits that it knows about. So that was incredible. And then week 4, there's this beautiful quote in one of Mary Oliver, who's a poet I dearly, dearly love. If you haven't heard of Mary Oliver, please do check out her books. One of my favorites is Thirst. And in one of, I think this is from Wild Geese, but in her one of her poems, she says, let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. And I did that. In week 4, I let the soft animal of my body love what it loves. And this translated into getting over fears I've had about pleasure in terms of my own sexuality and sexual curiosities, and being able to receive and move towards pleasure sexually that I've just never felt like I was, I don't know, maybe safe enough to do or confident enough to do. And that it took a while. It's not like it happened, day one with Damiana. It might do that with other people. But for me, man, I am really good at staying closed. And Damiana, through this slow process of building trust within myself, helped me to break open, break through, and experience parts of my femininity in particular that have really revolutionized the way that I see myself and I experience myself as a woman. So that I hope this is maybe interesting for you to listen to, maybe not at all, but pleasure is it's such a powerful topic and a powerful tool that we have. And if you find yourself battling with the idea of pleasure and how to experience it, I strongly recommend working with Damiana as a tea. I would do about 1.5 to 2 teaspoons of the herb per 2 cups of hot water. Let it steep maybe 7 to 10 minutes, and then drink that, maybe a cup in the morning, a cup in the afternoon. I'd usually make another cup in the evening with 1 teaspoon and then 2 cups of water, and just drink like a big mug of it. So you can play with the dose. If you find that Damiana makes you a little bit more jittery, because it's this beautiful blend of relaxing, but it's also an aphrodisiac. It's one of its main historic uses. So it increases blood flow, it increases sensitivity and awareness. So you want to find the dosage where you get that relaxation and then that heightened sensitivity without going into a caffeine type of experience. If you feel like, I feel like I'm on caffeine, you've gone too high. Take your dosage down by half, by half, by half until you reach that sweet spot. And I'd love to hear your experiences with this plant. I'd love to hear any comments you have around pleasure and maybe other tools you've learned or used. For me, dance has also been really helpful in opening up the way that I experience my body as a pleasure machine, which it is. It's like, it's amazing. This body, it can experience so much pleasure and delight, and it doesn't have to mean anything. It can just be that. So let me know your thoughts. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting my channel. Please subscribe if you like this. I'm thinking about doing this every month with my plant of the month. So if you are liking this, let me know, and I'll make sure next month when we do lemon balm to include my own personal reflections as I close out my own experience of dieting the plant for a full year. So I love you guys. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy what you enjoy. Love what the soft animal of your body wants to love. And I'll see you all again soon.